Welcome, everybody, to our conversations. And thanks for joining us today. It's September 1st, 2016. My name's Allison Peters, and to my right, we have three other guests.
Lynn Russell,
Doris Lake,
and Peter Diamondstone, talking about how policy changes could change the planet. For example, instead of producing more and more, we should cut the work week to 20 hours. And wasn't that one of the things I suggested? Cut it to 20 hours for 40 hours pay? And produce less. Another one was get rid of patents and copyrights and corporate forms. Total, unilateral, nuclear, and conventional, so-called conventional disarmament. We just do it. No making deals with people, we just do it. No more military, zero military budget. And we're talking about issues that could be used to build a movement with the level of activity that was created by particularly the Sanders candidacy, which sort of needs to have some spark or some issues to go with.
Right.
And another one is no private ownership of the major means of production and distribution. And one of the things that I've noticed is even like Amy Goodman and Maddow, they have, what's her name, Jill Stein?
Right.
But that's still within the capitalist
system.
Right.
Right.
There are, for instance, in Vermont, Gloria La Riva is a socialist, going to be on the ballot, or is on the ballot in 10 states, and she's from California.
What is she running for?
President of the United States.
Okay.
and you didn't even know.
And I did not
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
does she have a party affiliation?
Peace and freedom.
Okay.
Also, this Party of Socialism and Revolution, the breakoff from Workers' World. And at the Liberty Union meeting coming up on the 11th,
That's
they
the
will have
11th
a
of September.
Yeah, they're going to have a representative to work out with us a schedule for her to come from California and speak here so that people get to know her. But even the most, what do I say, people who represent the left on commercial television and in local television, if you want to watch Amy Goodman, you can watch her on this station, but she hasn't invited any socialists on either. Maybe we should make that a point when we meet on the 11th to see about whether Goodman or Maddow would put on Gloria La Riva.
Right, yeah.
And the traditions, I mean, Sanders did what's the name of the famous socialist from the 1900s? He got a million
Eugene
votes.
Debs?
Debs.
Right.
Sanders did a
documentary?
video.
Yeah.
The problem was, of course, the Indianan Debs did not have a Brooklyn accent, but on the tape, he's got it. And it's a nice piece. I think it's a good...
What are your thoughts on Eugene Debs?
Well...
Was he more radical than Bernie Sanders?
Oh, my God, yes. Sanders is not really a socialist.
Right.
So Sanders has never advocated for community ownership of the major means of production and distribution. He did, in 1980, try and make some contact with the Socialist Party. He wanted the nomination for vice president, and he asked me to call him, and I called, but I didn't get to do it until Sunday, and they had already done their nominating. But I think he did become an elector for the Socialist Workers' Party. I'm not sure of that, but it's just something that sticks in my head, and that would be in 1980.
Well, it sounds like, from what I can gather, that he was influenced by Eugene Debs, even if he didn't. He doesn't mirror him in all ways. He was influenced by him. Do you think that you can go from point A to point B, for example? Do you think that there has to be a gradual transition? If in some utopic society we transferred as an experiment to socialism from capitalism, what we have now, does this need to happen in stages? What are your thoughts?
Good question. It's a good question.
I don't believe that can happen. I believe in a kind of miracle, that throughout the world there has to be a unified single movement to make the major means of production and distribution community property. It has to be with the understanding that if we allow profit motive to be the stimulus for production, we're going to destroy the planet. There's no...
We're already on the road to that.
Yeah.
It's already clear.
Yeah. And the other thing is, we need to look at a single class, not a ruling class, a middle class, and a lower class. All right? We have to be willing to confiscate wealth and redistribute it to all the people on the planet. And I think that's in the Liberty Union. The first sentence of the Liberty Union platform is, the purpose of government is to provide a materially secure life for all the people of the planet. Now, this is a party that just exists in Vermont, right? And it begins with talking about the planet. A materially secure life for all the people on the planet, including socialized health care. That's the first sentence of the platform. And
what about the idea of a basic income? Everybody just gets a basic income.
Basic income.
Do you think that would make a big difference? Or is that still within the capitalist construct?
It still is. Unless you... it's...
You mean hourly wage? Excuse me.
No.
When you
just
say
like
basic income.
No matter what, I think the idea is that no matter what, everybody, whether you work or not, gets a basic income.
Whether you're employed or not.
Whether you're employed or not.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Everybody works.
Everybody works.
And
right.
I don't know the details of how that would go. Like if you do work, I don't know how this plays out. But I know the ideas are being tossed around. I was just wondering.
It's a very, very interesting concept because in 1972, it was proposed by President Nixon.
Really?
Yes.
President Nixon.
$1,600 a year for a family of 4.
Right.
He proposed that. And of course, my difference with him at that point was, no, $6,400 a year.
Yeah.
And he dropped it fast enough.
What kind of changes would occur if that was to take place? If there was, and it was some kind of livable income? I'm sure the people would argue, well, then people would just stop working, nothing would happen.
I don't think that's true, but I think people like to work.
There would be disagreements among those who were out there doing stuff like cleaning the streets and and then others who were just sitting at home. This is the kind of like argument that might come up.
We might have less crime if people's needs were met.
Absolutely, I think so.
And it can begin in kindergarten or earlier at school, where when tests are administered of people's knowledge, the students work together to write their answers, so that the answering the questions on a test becomes a community project where people learn to cooperate rather than compete. That's part of why it has to happen completely, because
Globally.
what?
Globally.
Globally, well, one of the reasons is if any nation tries to become a socialist country, the capitalist world will destroy them. And I mean, we tried it with the Soviet Union. We invaded the Soviet Union, conquered, I think it was 11 out of the 13 time zones, and what was called the Archangel expeditions. We invaded from the Pacific with Japan, and the capitalist countries of the world joined together to end the war, the Great War, because they had another problem over here. The Soviet Union was a problem. And they chose November 11th at 11 o'clock. Any idea why?
Which year was this in?
1918?
Probably to eclipse some other event that had happened
Exactly.
on November 11th in
You're
another
right.
year.
The event was the hanging day of the Haymarket Martyrs.
Oh, that was the hanging day.
That's the hanging day at noon.
Wow.
So they chose 11 o'clock on the 11th to end the beating each other up and focus on what the business they had to take care of in Eastern Europe and Asia.
And so nowadays we call November 11th.
Armistice Day or
Right.
Veterans Day.
That's right. That's right. And that's the official holiday.
And there's lots of literature that goes back to the 1880s. The labor movement was supporting May 1st as Labor Day, as we approach this phony Labor Day coming upon us.
That's right.
The red left supported May 4th because that's the day that the police fired on the demonstration in the Haymarket.
So what happened? So on May 1st, was this when I think this was the case where industrialization was coming to pass. They created something that would, take out the harvest out of the fields and a mechanism. And the workers, I think they protested on that day.
They started the strike for the 8-hour day.
And they were shot, or there was 4 shot, was it, on that date?
That
May
was
1st, 1886, I think.
May 1st. I think somebody was shot, and August Spies, who was one of the Haymarket Martyrs, ran a newspaper, and the editorial was a revenge editorial that calling on people to make sure they go to these demonstrations well armed so that they could fight back.
Right.
Nobody did, but somebody threw a bomb on the 4th.
And nobody knows. And so on
To
the
this
4th,
very day, nobody...
on the 4th they organized to carry on what happened on May 1st. They organized, I guess it was like workers, labor, socialists, anarchists, others, just other workers in general, in Haymarket Square,
Yeah.
May 4th. And then what happened there was, As
The
you
day
said.
the day was almost over. The last speaker was coming down off the platform when someone threw a bomb.
Someone threw a bomb and they never figured out who that was,
No,
right?
but the police, in a circle, fired on the demonstrators, and the only people who were killed were the police who killed themselves.
Open
And it's,
fire on
there has been traditionally a statue of a policeman on a horse in the Haymarket that keeps getting blown up. The last time it got blown up was 1968. So I understand they've now taken that policeman indoors.
I see.
But 68 was, that happened at the Democratic Party convention.
But efforts for trying to find a way for equitable distribution of the wealth of the world and a peaceful way to live can't come about as long as we have weapons. I mean, Pete Seeger's song, "Guns and swords and uniforms are scattered on the ground." I mean, I still get chills when I hear that because it seems so like a simplistic way, but it seems like it's the only way. I mean, I guess people could pick up rocks and throw them at each other, but how, if so much of the wealth depends on selling weapons and more and more sophisticated weapons. I mean, the greatest advancement of the human race seems to be the way that we have to kill each other. How,
Definitely the most funding goes into that, I think.
we can't even, the waste, the effects of testing bombs, all the pollution that comes from that. I mean, it would, and the beautiful land that was destroyed while they were testing these bombs, the animals that are killed, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, we call it dreaming or praying, but unless we get rid of the ways we have of relating to other human beings, I don't see how we can develop a sensible way of living on this planet.
Humans are so I don't know if it's humans or the powers that be so much are really attached to the idea that we need weaponry, we need military, we need to defend ourselves, we need for all of these reasons. How would we get to a point of in the consciousness as humankind to say, let's put down our arms? Do you think that this is something this is a seed that's already in the collective consciousness of people, that people would be ready for that?
All we have to do is tap it. All we have to do.
Well, Christianity, wait a minute, Christianity was supposed to do that.
Oh, there's a great line in Marx.
Thou shalt not kill? Come on.
That doesn't sound like...
How old is that book?
That sounds a little more like Judaism than
It's sold
Christianity
more than
to
any
me.
other book on the planet, but what are people doing with it?
That's true.
Putting it in hotel rooms.
Yeah. And the God-fearing.
So one of the
carrying
things that,
guns.
one of the policy positions I take as a candidate for the U.S. Senate is that the United States should unilaterally, totally disarm both its nuclear weapons and its so-called conventional, which are also nuclear because the rounds that are being fired out of the machine guns are all made with uranium and they're radioactive and leave radioactive dust and very high rates of cancer in places like
And
Ramada.
what's more, how do they get those materials? What has to happen to the earth? And what about the labor force? Like, who are mistreated, who are getting these materials out of the earth?
And the garbage, the nuclear garbage that's left on Indian reservations.
So we'll all go in the recycling business. How do we transform this toxic substance to something for peacetime purposes? I once worked for an organization called the Atomic Industrial Forum.
Okay.
And it was, I was very little when I heard about the dropping of the bombs, the nuclear weapons in Japan. And when I was older, I was enamored of the idea of working for the Atomic Industrial Forum in New York City, and I became the private secretary to the public relations manager of the Atomic Industrial Forum, dedicated to peacetime utilization of atomic energy. At the time, I had no idea how toxic this stuff was. You know, the AEC would send bulletins to the health physicists and say, ooh, ooh, you can't let those machines in the shoe stores, Tom McCann's shoe stores. There used to be a little machine where kids could look at their toes and see if the shoes fit properly.
Right, like an
but the
X-ray.
radiation was harmful, and what was once considered safe for people who worked with radioactive cobalts for cancer treatment was no longer safe. And we were promoting peacetime utilization of atomic energy in Japan and the United States. And now, I mean, I'm thinking about the nuclear plant in Japan, and what it's done to the waters of the ocean. So, I mean, all of the brains that are around would have to be dedicated to figuring out a way of disposing of all this toxic stuff so that the people who are left can
That's
live
true.
healthfully, in a
Just
healthy
from
way.
what we've created so far. It's very interesting.
And we're the species that's evolved. I mean, we think
Supposedly.
we think we're really doing well. I don't know about the bears. They might be a lot better off than we are.
Yeah.
Is there
Better be.
insanity in the genes of a human being? Because it sure seems that's what is evolving. If we wanted to look at Darwin's theory of the survival of the fittest, the nuttiest, the most insane. I mean, if
Makes you wonder.
If we
thinking
are-
about things.
the top of the chain, the food chain, and the best we can do is to destroy the planet, there's got to be something wrong in the...
There's some kind of imbalance going on there.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the way technology has evolved, it's not actually making people's lives better on any scale. You know, it was supposed to originally make your life easier, so you have to do less labor, you have more free time. But people are working more hours than ever in a lot of circumstances.
Where is the 8-hour day?
Where has
When
the
did they
8-hour
take
day-
it away? We gave it away, didn't we?
Absolutely.
Because there's so much work that you have to do. You have to sort your garbage. There's work at home, new work at home.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
And we get people doing all kinds of things to recycle. But maybe the real answer to that is to not produce so much. And I'm back to the 20-hour week for
Yeah.
40 hours
Right.
pay.
Right?
Nurture the earth, huh?
And the other problem is you can't find truth anymore because government has secrets. How can you vote as an intelligent voter if the government has secrets? One secret. We're now talking about a fascist government.
Well, what about the fact that, I mean, like, let's say that we had no more secrets anymore. The information was out there. What good does that do under the current circumstances where people are, you know, they're inundated with, like, the news that they get and the celebrity gossip and, you know, the spectacle that passes for entertainment, and people don't have time to look. I mean, if information is not readily available and people don't have the time and the energy to engage with that information.
Well, now they're only working 20 hours a week.
Well, okay, so if we get that going, you know,
See,
we're
that's
on
why
the-
that's
well, then-
why it has to all happen together.
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
it's all locked together as one. And one of the, this issue about a single country becoming a socialist country. Well, when
Cuba's doing it.
what?
Cuba is doing that.
But look what Cuba had to put up with from the capitalist world,
Exactly.
particularly this capitalist country.
Yep.
Well, look at Iran. Iran, they always talk about beginning in 1979 when this government took over from the Shah. But you need to go back to the Eisenhower administration, 1953, when the United States overthrew the Mossadegh socialist government and killed him. Or Venice in Central America, who it wasn't such a radical plan. He just said, well, we'll take some government land and we'll redistribute. We won't take it away from the wealthy. We'll just give everybody a little piece of land so that they can survive. And that's the worst thing you can do. You're taking away our labor supply.
What happened there?
They killed him.
Who killed
Arbennis. The United States.
The United States went in and killed.
Yeah, and the date was 9/11.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's one of the
Ironies. Yeah.
things that have happened on September 11th. And wasn't
And
there also Pinochet in Chile?
In Chile, when we installed Pinochet instead of Allende, we killed him too.
We don't talk about these histories, as far as I know.
Not in my history book at PS 24.
And nobody talked about November 11th
So
because
we've got a problem in our education system as well.
no, that's not the problem.
No?
No,
Well,
You
how
get
about
the
how
truth
we
that
write
they-
our history books?
you get the truth that the capitalist system wants you to get.
That's right.
Yeah, well, you got to start looking elsewhere.
You got to start looking elsewhere. And how do you do that? Like, what are some of the suggestions? Like, go on the internet, look into alternative media. I mean, those things are very marginalized as well. So we need to build some strength in our alternative media as well, so it becomes more mainstream. Just getting the truth out there.
Venezuela its socialist system is deteriorating because the price of oil is going down. Right?
Right.
And it was making its way with sales of oil at a higher price. And so in many ways, the attack can come in a lot of ways, like the United States is producing oil as fast as it can, fracking and so forth. And Saudi Arabia is still producing as much oil as possible. And the price for us, we see it at the gas pump, and the price is way down, and everybody's smiling. Right? But that's part of the attack on that particular socialist government. And then there's the kidnapping of, what was his name in Haiti?
Aristide?
Aristide, twice, wasn't it? They kidnapped him, and finally they said he can't come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and then we did that in Grenada, too, to the socialist leader in Grenada.
What in Aristide in Haiti? What was so threatening about him? that
Socialist.
He was socialist.
Yeah.
As well. So there's a real fear of socialism from the capitalist powers.
No, it's not just fear, it's terror.
Right.
See, it's not fear, it's terror. And they will do anything. Right?
I wonder if like public opinion is starting to change with some of the consciousness about what is socialism within the new generation coming in, because I mean there was a lot of fear mongering that has been pumped very strongly into people about socialism, like how horrible it is, going back to McCarthy and the Red Scare and all of that. But what about the next generation? They don't have that background, although I mean they could always resurge the propaganda with the witch hunts and all the rest of it. But do you think that overall, like the next generation coming up are more amenable to the ideas?
Well, I think that's one of the attributes, one of the good things that Sanders has done. He's made the word common usage and very acceptable, particularly to people who are young and may not be so acceptable to some, but I mean, Trump still gets away with calling him a communist.
Yeah.
Oh, we are now at a half an hour. Should we keep going?
It's up to you. Half an hour is pretty good. We can keep going. It's up to you guys. What do you feel like doing?
Do you want to talk a little bit more about education and how giving everybody a livable wage and working 20-hour weeks for a 40-hour wage and focusing the education of youngsters on cooperatively solving problems rather than competing to be the one to get the answer or to be fastest or whatever. But
that's very entrenched into our whole culture and the education system.
Right, but it doesn't. We don't have to continue down that path. We could offer an alternative and make cooperation and more creative ideas be the goal or the
that would be
point
revolutionary in the best possible way, I think.
It interests me that so many people who come from other countries are more than bilingual, and how it never came up in my public school education, other than taking a couple of years of Latin because you needed to have a couple of years of some language to get into college. You know, at least in the New York City school system, that was, you had to have a certain number, I think it was 3 years in high school. And now, I mean, a lot of kids in grade school are learning to speak Spanish and French. And I mean, I think that's a good thing. I mean, being able to communicate in the other languages seems like...
It opens up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
You get to be able to talk to about a third of the population of Arizona
Right?
that you couldn't otherwise talk with.
Right? People...
Although they speak English too.
That's right.
They're bilingual, we aren't.
Latin does not Latin, and learning Latin, it's very interesting, but it's not a language that's used. That is interesting to think about. And speaking of yes, we could have cooperative education, and then what about worker-owned cooperatives? How much of a difference would that make if we changed that whole dynamic? And the workers were owned their actual...
The business?
The actual business.
Makes sense to me.
Well, doesn't that sound like community ownership of the major means of production and distribution?
It does.
And the only way that can happen, it has to be by seizure. It has to be by confiscation.
So what does that entail? Does that entail some authority coming in and saying, this is the way things are going to be now?
Maybe.
Because that hasn't seemed to work out too well.
Well, of course it doesn't work out too well.
Doesn't it have to come from the bottom up? The people have to decide it and do it for themselves rather than having some authority come in? Or do you need that in order for it to actually happen?
Well, maybe there could be an incentive for the owners to look at it differently.
It almost happened, that revolution in the Soviet Union that gave rise to the Soviet Union almost happened in Germany. I mean, and that really had an impact on what's now the social safety net in Europe that's so much more effective than in the United States. so that Sanders can say Denmark is a socialist country or Sweden is a socialist country, and they're no more socialist than the United States.
I don't believe that they identify themselves as socialists.
No, I don't think so either.
But I think that's where the term democratic socialism comes in, which is...
And it's particularly confusing because at the beginning of the 20th century, the socialists were called democratic socialists. So, but now it's the non-socialists who are called the democratic socialists. And I had a really nice guy who wanted me to join with him, and he said, we have the same goals. Why don't we work together? And for me, we don't have the same goals. You want 3 classes of citizens and I only want 1. That's good enough for me to say we can't work together.
3 classes of citizens.
Yeah.
Being...
Rich, middle, and poor.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And I hear the liberals talking about maintaining the middle class.
Yeah.
But what about the rest of it? That means you're going to leave the ruling class in place? Make them pay a little more
what about
taxes,
the poor?
maybe? Yeah.
So is there some remedy for getting rid of greed?
Where is that going to
Hemlock.
come from? Getting rid of greed.
Yeah, and that's it really has to be inculcated from the beginning in kids who are going to school. Not that you're competing to be better or higher than each other, but what you have, you want to share so that everybody can.
You got to change sports. You got to change
best.
sports. I mean,
Oh yeah,
that's
that great movie about
that's a-
Vietnam and football.
that's a form of. Oh, there was a movie. Yes, they juxtaposed a football coach saying, "Get out there and kill," and then there's a picture of General Westmoreland saying to the troops, "Get out there and kill."
Yeah, I mean,
And
there is a
it's-
legacy of militarism that feeds into the sports culture. I mean, we just had the Olympics occur.
Oh,
And there's a lot
Oh.
of nationalism and militarism that is associated with these huge sports events. As amazing as the athletes are, there's this kind of overshadow.
Why is it that the wealthy don't have to pay their taxes? They can give their money away to make you see what they want you to see, or hear what they want you to hear. And they can say on that station, we need your contribution, but your contribution just saves the wealthy a little bit of money. But they control what we will see on PBS or what we will hear. And it's kind of interesting. I've listened to the collections of music that PBS peddles as a reward for making a contribution. And there are some songs that are missing. There's some music, even of Pete Seeger's, that's missing. Pete Seeger's song about Eleanor. I hate war, and so does Eleanor. When he was trying to keep us from going to war until the Soviet Union was invaded by Germany. And how his views changed and how his music changed. And similarly, I haven't heard, what is it, Country Joe and the Fish? I go to a Veterans for Peace annual meeting, and every one of the Vietnam guys can sing that song from beginning to end. Country Joe and the Fish. And
Yeah.
another one, be the first one on your block to have your kid come home in a box.
first time I heard that.
And every one of them knows that song from beginning to end. It's never broadcast.
Right.
That's interesting. I mean, art can play a huge role as well.
And it's controlled by the wealthy.
It is, as far as it's distributed. Yeah, it's absolutely true. although you do have grassroots movements with arts.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes things take off
Mm-hmm.
despite
Mm-hmm.
the controlling powers.
And it becomes somehow co-opted by the not record companies anymore, the CD companies. They co-opt it by saying, we'll give you money.
Yeah.
All right? We'll give you money, we'll give you blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. So seems like a lot of things come back to the problems associated with ownership, the idea of ownership.
And you were talking about co-ops.
Right.
And I
So
was-
if a musician had full agency over their own work, you know, and translate that across the board, what kind of a difference would that make in our world? I mean, I think it would make a difference on many levels, possibly.
if there were no copyrights, musicians, creators of music, creators would create the best that they could do, not that which would be the best to sell. A different motivation.
I guess the arguments that people might come up with are, well, how does an artist make a living then? How does an
Didn't
artist
you talk
survive?
about a guaranteed wage?
Quality,
If
right?
we're there,
Quality.
But there's another approach to it. The socialist says, from each according to ability, to each according to need.
what does that mean exactly?
That means if you are, if you're working as a creator of music, you don't make much money, maybe. But we shouldn't stifle you because you don't make much money. We should say, well, we will help to provide you with food, with shelter, all right? Because we provide that to anybody in a socialist society. Which means somebody has got to be working building things. And 20 hours a week may not be enough, but maybe it is. Maybe we don't need to build big houses. And there's a movement now to building little houses.
That's true. Right here in Brattleboro, there's a festival for the tiny house.
Yeah.
Tiny house festival. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Simplifying our lives for those of us who have too much could be a way of making things more equal overall.
Planting seeds.
Yes. So where does the Liberty, like you guys are involved in the Liberty Union Party, and so what does the Liberty Union Party do aside from have candidates running in various elections?
Not very much.
That's it.
Yeah.
Do you work on issues or organizing?
We issue a press release now and again.
Okay.
For example, going back to the weapons issue, the United States has just sold a very large cache of weapons to Saudi Arabia to be used by them to kill people in Yemen, which has no equipment to fight back. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. Yeah. And our U.S. senators and House, our people in Congress, voted for that. And our people voted for the special funding for the Zionist forces in Palestine to invade Gaza. Now, it's a virtual consensus, except for the United States and a couple of its cronies, that those invasions were war crimes, constituted war crimes. And it is the rule of law here that those who aid and abet are as guilty as those who perpetrate. And so Liberty Union, by consensus, voted to label our congressional delegation as war criminals for appropriating the money for the invasion of Gaza by the, and I don't use the word Israeli government, I use the expression Zionist government. For me, Judaism is a religion and a culture, not a nationality. Zionism is the nationality, but the more interesting thing about it is there are a hell of a lot more Christian Zionists than there are Jewish Zionists. So it's not a Jewish movement. It's
Definitely two different things.
What?
Definitely two different things.
Mhm.
Zionism and Judaism.
Yeah, one.
Although there's many who might disagree. So what do you see? Do you see, in an ideal world, how would you see alternative parties such as the Liberty Union going forward? Do you see, if you could inject some, would you make any changes as far as activities go, or just building stronger within the structure that you have already?
It's kind of a doomsday fight doing it electorally, because since the beginning they've made it more and more difficult for Liberty Union to exist, to participate, and now to be a major party. They've doubled it.
How did that happen? What are some of the limitations put on
The
you?
Democrats and the Republicans and the Progressives joined together to pass law. Well, first it was without the Progressives, passed legislation to make it more difficult. We have rules. For example, we have no closed balloting, no secret ballot in Liberty Union. We have no age restriction in Liberty Union. So if you're 8 and you want to participate, you can participate in Liberty Union. We make decisions about policy, platform by consensus. We nominate by simple majority. The law says we have to do it all by simple majority. Well,
It says you have to run your party
Yeah.
not making consensus-based
Right.
decisions.
yeah.
Huh.
But we're sort of grandfathered because they passed those changes after we had already adopted those rules. They made the changes based on the rules that we had. They require secret ballots on everything, and since 1973, I think it was, we decided there would be no secret ballot. We made some other decisions. For instance, as soon as Sanders and his colleagues left in '77, one of the rules we adopted is that the presidential primary, is binding in Liberty Union. It's not binding in any of the other parties. It's only binding in Liberty Union.
What does that mean?
That means that while it's preferential, or was preferential even in Liberty Union, Margaret Wright was nominated by the largest vote in a Liberty Union primary before or since 1976. She was nominated for president. But because it was preferential, the primary, the state committee had to make the final decision. And the Sanders people on one side and the Diamondstone people on the other side, the vote was 8-6, not to put her on the ballot. She would take votes away from Jimmy Carter. She would. She was not
The
a
spoiler
good speaker.
argument.
What?
The spoiler argument?
Yeah, yeah.
That was-
And the other thing is that 2 of the people of the Diamondstone 6 were under 10. So But that was sort of the end. Sanders and his friends left the following year, in early 77. And Sanders left in November 77.
Was it over a dispute about having a presidential candidate?
No, it was because the war was over.
What war is that? The Vietnam War?
Yeah. That's why they all quit, because the war was over and we were an anti-war party. That's not what we were.
Right.
I mean, we had potential for more than that. And at the first press conference, Bill Meyer said that he was a candidate for the U.S. Senate to move the Democratic Party to the left. And he was the Liberty Union candidate for the U.S. Senate. And Denny Morriso said he was a candidate for the U.S. House. And he said he was a candidate to stop the war in Vietnam. And I said I was a candidate to build a political party that would have a candidate for every elective office in the state. And of course, it was an impossible goal, which is what Einstein says is the only thing that's worthwhile. Right? The only thing worthwhile is to undertake things that are impossible.
And another thing he said, I believe, is that you can't solve the problem at the same level of consciousness where it was created. So we have to get outside of all these habits of thought and culture and paradigms of thinking.
Which brought me back to
Create a new way.
the May 1st, May 4th.
Right.
May 4th, Tiananmen Square started. May 4th, the killings at Kent State. May 4th, Mao Zedong took his demonstration in Shanghai, not May 1st. It's seen differently by the political red as opposed to the labor. All right, the Knights of Columbus or whoever it was got international to make May 1st the holiday.
So there's some contention over whether it should be May 1st or May 4th.
Yeah.
And what are the two different arguments?
Well, May 1st is when the strikes for the 8-hour day began, and May 4th was the day that the police fired on the demonstration, the strikers as they were leaving the Haymarket Square. One is about the use of violence by the state against the workers, and the other was about the beginning of the strike for the 8-hour day. So they came to a compromise. And there's lots of information, Voltairine de Cleyre, and what's her name, who died in 41? The wife of one of the Haymarket martyrs.
Lucy Parsons.
Lucy, yeah. They both said often that more people didn't go to work on November 11th to commemorate the hanging day than didn't go to work on Christmas. That it was a bigger holiday than Christmas for labor. Right? That's why the capitalists chose November 11th and stop beating each other up and see if they could.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we're coming up on Labor Day here, and it seems to have become a holiday. I mean, we're supposed to be thinking about labor and taking a day of rest, but it's become a holiday that's more focused on like shopping or consuming, you know. And thinking back to 2006 on May 1st, there was huge mobilization in the streets. Migrant workers. I mean, there's like 1.5 million people. It was one of the biggest. It was one of the biggest demonstrations across the country that we've had. So I'm just thinking about like some of the, you know, how holidays have become celebrated as opposed to how they start off. You know what I mean?
Well, we've been doing it on a common, commemorating the 1st of May, since 1984, when Liberty Union took the resolution that we would try and make May Day a state holiday. And 86, I guess, was the centennial. And we originally called ourselves the Haymarket Centennial Committee because it was almost two years away. But after the centennial, we called ourselves the Bicentennial Committee because it's 100 years away, but, you know, we keep on trucking.
I think
And
this
that's-
program should conclude with Charlie King and Karen Brandau's song, Bring Back the 8-Hour Day. When did we give it away?
Yes, I think that would be very relevant to today,
Yeah.
and like how people are plugged in 24 hours a day to their jobs
And to their machinery.
with all of this technology that was supposed to make our lives easier.
Yeah.
Yes, where did the 8-hour day go? Did it ever exist?
Maybe during the Second World War it existed.
Yeah.
But I don't know where it exists in the United States at all.
Do you guys?
What?
Can you guys? How does that song go?
When
Can you sing?
the 8-hour day?
Yeah.
When did we give it away? That's about all I can remember
Bring
of
back
it.
the 8-hour day. When did we give it?
I think we should try and find that Charlie King.
Would you guys
and
have
Brenda-
it at home?
We did.
Oh, right.
We had a fire.
And there was that.
In the fire.
Was that.
Yeah, we lost a lot of really great records. And that song that I was referring to that Pete Seeger sang about when he was trying to keep us from going to this, Weavers were trying to keep us, I don't think they were called the Weavers then, but they were trying to keep us from going to war. They were singing about not going to war with Germany because there was this pact between the Soviet Union and Germany. And as soon as that was broken, he gave up that song, and they got a new one that said, "Let's go to war."
Who was that? Who was
Seeger.
Seeger wrote a song about "Let's Go to War"
Oh yeah,
for the World War II.
For World War II, yeah. But
Right.
it followed on his song that was, let's see, I hate war and so does Eleanor. All right, the song that he was singing to keep us out of war.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, I guess that concludes our session today for Conversations. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you again next time.